Hello, and welcome to Industry Innovators. Today, we're going to discuss a frustrating experience for many small business owners when the person that you've just hired quits soon after taking the new position. Hi, my name is Allie, and I'm an HR coordinator with HR Advantage. HR Advantage is your HR management partner for small and medium sized businesses. We handle everything from HR, health and safety, payroll, compliance, and operations. Our goal is to help you focus growing your business while we manage the HR complexities. At HR Advantage, our mission is simple. We exist to take the weight of HR and compliance off your plate by being productive, responsive, and solution focused. Well, we've all been there. You need to hire someone ASAP. You go through all the effort of posting the job, screening resumes, doing interviews, and training someone new, only for them to quit a couple of weeks after. It's frustrating, it's expensive, and ultimately, it's disruptive to any small business. So, today we'll break down why this can happen, what are some things that you can do to prevent it, and how to learn from it if it does happen. We'll be discussing some topics as to, some reasons why new hires leave early, the costs associated with a new hire leaving, and how losing a new hire can affect more than just your bottom line. We'll also look at some steps that businesses like yourself can take early on to avoid future problems, including some proactive solution and tips that you can use in your hiring process. And finally, we'll look at what steps to take when somebody does decide to leave and making sure that you're making the most of your opportunity and correcting any mistakes for future success. So, why do new hires leave so quickly? Have you ever been in this situation? The new person you hired just sent you a message saying they quit. After spending those past few months reviewing resumes, interviewing, and training this new person, now they're leaving the company. You're frustrated and you ask yourself why. It's hard. It can make you feel defeated, but just so you know, this happens to everyone. And honestly, there are so many reasons why this situation could happen. Sometimes there are issues in the hiring process or onboarding of your new hires. And honestly, sometimes it comes down to personal reasons outside of the workplace. So let's dive into it a little bit deeper to help you understand what could have happened. Firstly, expectations maybe weren't clear from the start. Maybe they weren't clear about the role, the hours, the pay, company culture, and maybe it didn't match what that person had expected. If someone is promised or assumes a job is going to be one way and then it turns out to be completely different from what they expected, they may choose to leave early before they commit too much time and energy into this position. And the reality of the job maybe didn't match what they were promised. Maybe they expected to work directly with clients, but instead all they're doing is answering emails and entering data into a spreadsheet. What they were expecting to do is not matching what they're actually being asked to do. And you know what? Maybe the job conditions didn't line up with what they expected. For example, let's say this new person expected to have a flexible schedule, but in reality, they have a set schedule from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. that just doesn't work with their personal schedule and personal lives. So they may have to choose to move on. This is why it's essential to have clear and honest expectations throughout the course of the hiring process. So new hires fully understand what the job duties and expectations are. There also could be something, like a lack of onboarding or support when they are first brought on board. The hiring process doesn't stop once you stop interviewing. The hiring process exists into the onboarding, everything from the first day of signing the employment contract to starting training on their first day. And you know what? Starting a new job can be overwhelming for anybody. You're starting at a new place, you're meeting new people, and you have to learn a brand new job. So it's your job as a small business owner to make it as straightforward as possible for them. That means your processes have to be smooth. That includes making sure that you get necessary paperwork signed, things like payroll deposit information, scheduling the first day, having things like necessary technology setups, things like having access to an email address, to drives, logins, anything like that. And also, you want to make sure that they have a list of people who they might have to meet kind of along the way, whether that be through their first day or for the first couple of weeks throughout their orientation as well. And having a plan on who's going to provide this person with the training and also who that new candidate or that new hire can go to if they have questions about anything. Now, if onboarding is messy and disorganized, that new person might feel like this is a sign of things to come. There can also be something like a personality or workplace culture mismatch, right? You could have the best training and the best onboarding plan, but if the new person coming in doesn't fit well with your current team, it can be disruptive. So that's why it's essential in the interviewing process to get a sense of how that person is going to fit in with your team. You know, they could have the best experience and qualifications, but if they don't communicate or don't receive feedback well, it really won't matter how much of a great worker they are if they're impacting your team in a negative way. And ultimately, there could be personal circumstances. Sometimes it just comes down to personal reasons for that individual, and circumstances or priorities can change at any given minute for anybody. And there could also be better opportunity elsewhere, or you know what, maybe their home life circumstances have changed. Some of those things are potentially out of our control. There might be some situations where you, as a small business owner, aren't able to fully control this person leaving. But what your responsibility is to create a hiring and onboarding process to help keep people for as long as possible. There's a lot of resources that go into hiring a new person. There's time, money, and energy that gets invested into every single person that comes aboard. According to a study by Randstad Canada, the average cost of employee turnover in Canada is approximately $30,000 per employee annually. Well, there's other businesses that estimate it might exceed, cost of up to $100,000 per employee as well. So when a new hire leaves early, the damage is bigger than you, right? There's direct and tangible costs, things that you can actually see. We think about things like the cost and time to post job ads on sites like Indeed or LinkedIn. The time and energy that goes into reviewing resumes, scheduling and contacting several interviews throughout the process. You're either going to have to pay someone to do it or you'll be doing it yourself, which is going to take time and energy away from other aspects of your business potentially. There's also some initial hiring costs. You need to provide this person things for them to do the job correctly. Think of things like uniforms, PPE, safety glasses, hard hats, things like that. There's also the cost associated of training that person and having somebody else, come in and train that person as well. You could also potentially pay for some training requirements, things like first aid classes. That money you won't get. In addition to that, if that person is working for you, you have to pay them, right? So things like wages, salary, bonuses, extended health benefits, some things that you've already paid to this person who didn't stay. And there's also, things like payroll setup. You might have to register with WCB, cover costs for travel allowances, or maybe you helped this person relocate and had to incur some costs that way as well. Now, in addition to kind of the direct costs, there's also, a wide variety of indirect and intangible costs as well to having your new hire leave, right? So you could lose the trust of this new person if they were, kind of quote unquote sold something different than what they were actually doing. Someone may not physically leave right away, but the effort might diminish if what they're doing is not what they expected, until a time where they have to decide that this is no longer for them. There's also the loss of productivity. If this person leaves, you're going to be down a person, which means other team members have to pick up the extra work and still have to do their job. That could also lead to a morale dip. If other people have to pick up the slack and have to do extra work, your current team members might feel stressed or unappreciated, and overall, this can impact your current team culture, and make it frustrating for supervisors as well. There's also might be some cost to your customers who are seeing delays and potentially they might head to competitors, right? If you have decreased productivity because this person has left, you have a reduced ability to produce, and this could impact your reputation with customers. Your customers might look to your competitors to get the job done, and you could potentially lose not only a source of revenue, but also a loyal customer as well. And we all know it's very difficult to get customers back from a bad experience, which could have longer lasting impacts on your reputation. You could also have a revolving door reputation as an employer, especially in small communities where word spread fast. If someone has a bad experience or people are constantly leaving, you may create a reputation for yourself that this is a place where people don't want to work, or they just assume that it's a bad place to work that has a bad company culture. So, losing a new hire is never going to be ideal, and ultimately, it costs your business in more ways than one. But there are some steps that you can take to help improve your chances of your new hire staying long term and being a productive member of your team. So, what can you do as a small business owner to avoid new hires exiting early? Before you even post a job ad, you must ask yourself, what do I need from this position? What am I going to expect of this person? And how am I going to actually manage their performance? Without a clear understanding, your expectations of that new hire might be mismatched. This process starts before this new person even starts their first day. This is going to start all the way from the beginning of the job ad, throughout the interviewing process, all the way to their first day of training and beyond. So, how do you make sure expectations are clear? Well, here are some things you can focus on during the recruitment process and hiring process. Firstly, make sure you write a clear and honest job posting. Clearly outline the roles, the duties, and the working conditions. If this role requires heavy lifting, don't say light duties. Say exactly what it is so this person understands what the expectations of the job are. And you want to make sure you say exactly what you mean. Avoid buzzwords, jargons, all those things can potentially lead to misunderstandings down the road. And like that, you also want to be upfront about things like pay, hours, and your expectations of this person in this position. People should know exactly what they're applying for and what to expect throughout their employment. You also want to make sure that you're screening for fit, not just for skill. Remember, you hire for attitude and train for skill. Think to yourself how this new person is going to fit in with your current team and be a productive member. So, here are some things that you can focus on during your onboarding and training process to help ensure that expectations are aligned from day one. Firstly, you need to have a structured onboarding plan. It doesn't have to be complicated. It could be something even as simple as a checklist. But this should and needs to be done in advance of this person's first day starting. You need to have an idea and a plan to ensure that you're providing adequate training and don't miss anything important for this person. You could also look at pairing this new hire with a buddy or a mentor on shift. This helps that person feels more connected, and it's also helpful that they have someone dedicated to them if they need any help, have questions, or need guidance on anything. Hopefully, this can be someone they can learn from and who can actually show them the ropes of how things are getting done and what the expectations are. They can maybe be a little bit more in depth in explaining, safety procedures, hours, overtime, breaks, any type of processes that this new hire may need. For example, we see it often. A journeyman might guide a green apprentice, and that can make a world of difference in the long. You also want to make sure that you walk through the job duties in plain language. And this can be done throughout the interviewing process. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be every single task, but just paint a picture of what it's like. A day in the life kind of example can help this person understand, and they can make some expectations as well. You could also help and tour the site with this new hire. Show them where they're going to work. You can show them the shop, the barn, the field, show them exactly kind of what the working conditions are. It's can be done on the first day, for example, and this helps them get familiar with the tools, the environment, and hopefully meet some new people that they'll be working with as well. This again helps show some real world working examples and of how you expect things to get done at your company. You also want to make sure you outline how performance will be measured. You know, what are your expectations? So what does good performance look like versus what does bad performance look like? And how exactly are you measuring it at your company? This is going to help with making sure that there's no surprises and that this a new candidate understands exactly what's expected of them. You also want to encourage questions. Don't assume. Just because someone is silent, not asking questions, doesn't mean they actually understand what you're saying. So, we want to make sure that you're checking in and making sure that they have an actual fulsome understanding of what you're trying to provide them. And also, don't just assume that just because this person may have had previous experience, that they know exactly what you want or how you expect them to do that job. Right. And you also want to make sure that this person has kind of an easy route in terms to ask questions. You want to make sure that they have someone who's accessible to them, whether that's going to be you, a buddy, a mentor, a supervisor, whoever it is. We should all be encouraging open conversation, active listening, and making sure that if they do have any questions, they know exactly who to go for guidance. Ultimately, communication is going to be key. There should be ongoing and active conversations between you and the new hire from the first day that they start and throughout the onboarding process. You really won't know if there's an issue if you're not communicating. So check in. Doesn't have to be complicated, doesn't have to be long, just making sure you're having open communication to make sure that there's no gaps or misunderstanding. So making sure that the new hire can stay long term. Now, what do you do if someone does leave early? Ideally, you're going to be proactive. You've set your clear expectation, have a great onboarding plan, and your new hire stays long term. But honestly, sometimes it just doesn't work out. So, if you do find yourself in this situation, what are some things that you can do when a new hire leaves early so you can hopefully avoid this situation in the future? First, you want to do a quick exit conversation. Why are you leaving? You don't have to ask for personal details or anything like that, but just a general understanding would be helpful. Check in, were expectations misaligned? And if so, ask why. What kind of fell apart throughout the course of their employment? And was there any breakdown in communication? Is it something that's personal and kind of out of your control, or was there something specific to the training or the job that led to this decision? Ultimately, you're going to want to know if this is something that was in your control. Can you address it? You know, Ultimately, at the end of the day, that person still may choose to leave, but at least you're going to have a better understanding of the reason. And the more information you have, the better you can adjust and plan for your next time. You also want to take a look at patterns if this keeps happening. Is this new hire leaving early becoming a norm more than and not the expectation? For example, let's just say you had two new hires who quit in a row at a trucking job because of unpredictable hours. This might be a clue that maybe your scheduling wasn't really communicated clearly to this person. People ultimately may not tell you exactly, but trends can help you paint an overall picture. Again, the more insight you have, the better you can plan and adjust accordingly. And then ultimately, you're going to want to review your onboarding process. Something to be very clear and to be mindful of is that the onboarding and training process is a live process. This should be something that is revisited often, not just if something is going poorly. You want to look at your onboarding process and see, are there areas where you can improve rather. Was this a plan that was well thought out, or did you honestly just kind of throw it together? Were there aspects that maybe needed more training or more attention that this person felt that they didn't need? Maybe they didn't get enough support. Who knows? So you're going to want to make sure that your process is well thought out, well planned, and also that you're doing check-ins and making sure that you're having open and honest communication with this candidate as well. So while having a new hire leave is never easy, it can also be viewed as an opportunity to improve. Even if that person is leaving for reasons outside of your control, it's a great opportunity to check in and get feedback. How was the hiring process? How was the onboarding process? Was there something that maybe we could have done a little bit differently or better in your opinion? Having this information and feedback is going to be invaluable to you in the long run. The hiring and onboarding process is active and ongoing, which means it needs to be reviewed on a regular basis to ensure that it is helping your company and not hindering it. Hiring someone who leaves after a couple weeks is frustrating, but it's also an opportunity to learn. Most early exits come down to misaligned expectations or lack of support. So, with clear communication, structured onboarding, and a little extra effort upfront, small businesses in Alberta can save time, money, and ultimately a lot of stress. So, some key things to remember during your hiring and onboarding process. Firstly, be honest in your job postings and interviews. It's better to screen out someone who doesn't fit expectations early on rather than lose them after a few weeks. Onboarding really does matter. Even a small business needs a plan. It doesn't have to be super complicated, but it does need to be well thought out. Onboarding doesn't just mean technical training. We also have to remember it includes people getting set up on things like payroll, extended health benefits, uniform, anything else related to the job. You also want to remember that culture fits as much as hard skills, right? So having someone with a great skill set and a terrible attitude can be disastrous to your current team's morale. So make sure you're looking for attitude and mindset in addition to skills. And you're going to want to check in early and often. Super small conversations can prevent big problems. Give me quick 10-minute check ins. And also, just don't assume that people know what you want and expect, even if they have previous experience. You need to train them on your expectations and ask for feedback. Is there something we can improve, change? Was there an aspect of training that was lacking? Just remember, this is a live and ongoing process. And so checking in as often as possible is going to be helpful for you in the long run. And lastly, learn from turnover. It happens. And if it happens more than once, it might be a sign to adjust your hiring or onboarding process. It's not ideal, but it's an opportunity and to learn and grow your process. In Alberta's close, tight knit labor market, every hire is going to matter. So, setting people up for success isn't just the right thing to do, it's a good business decision. So, next we'll chat about some common questions that we get from small business owners in regards to hiring. So, first question here: how soon should I check in with a new hire? Honestly, pretty quickly, hopefully within the first week, and you want to make sure that you're doing it often. Again, it doesn't have to be complicated or formal. You could do a simple coffee chat, anything that can help prevent surprises in the long run. So just check in and see how things are going, good and bad. If something isn't going well, be proactive and get it changed right away. This will help build trust with the new candidate and hopefully a long working relationship as well. Your second question here: how do you know if it's me or just a bad hire? Honestly, if it happens more than once, or sorry, if it happens once, it might just be the hire. If it happens repeatedly, look at your hiring and onboarding practices. But either way, you have to ask questions to get a better understanding of what the issue is. So ask for feedback of the new hire, ask your team, ask the supervisors. Having information will help you make the best, well informed decision for your company. And lastly, here, how long should onboarding take? Many employers think onboarding is just the first day or the first week, showing someone around, doing a little bit of paperwork, and giving them a uniform. But a solid onboarding process typically takes anywhere from about 30 to 90 days, depending on the role. So, onboarding can include things like safety training refreshers, certifications. It could be being trained by someone who's in a more senior position. Also, things like check ins. These could be informal and maybe more formal, potentially doing something like a 2 week check in, a 1 month check in, a 3 month check in, something like that. And also, you want to start gradually increasing this person's responsibilities and duties. At this point, they should be more comfortable. They've had the right training. You should be able to add some more duties and responsibilities to their workload as well. So you just remember that the goal of onboarding it should be that it lasts long enough that the new hire feels competent, connected, and uh, confident in what they're doing in their roles and not just surviving in it. You want to make sure that they're actually actively and positively contributing to their team. Well, that's it for today's industry innovators. Remember, when a new hire leaves just after a couple weeks, it's not just bad luck. There's usually warning signs and lessons we can learn to make the next hire a success. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for taking the time to invest in your people and your business. If you found this helpful, be sure to check out our other videos and share this one with a fellow Alberta business owner who might benefit from this topic. Please feel free to connect with us on our social media or LinkedIn. And as always, you can always email us at hello@hradvantageservices.com if you have any questions. Thanks so much and have a great day.